Hey guys, Regular Joe CEO here, back for another installment. Glad you're here joining us. Um, I want to talk to you today about team building, and I'm not talking about building team building within the confines of an existing team necessarily, but well, maybe I am. But I got a lot of questions. I got questions about give me some advice on how to start a new team for your first deal. Tell me about your first deal and how building that team worked. Tell me about you know, any advice and pitfalls and things of that nature around building a team. And I thought kind of across multiple people asked, so I thought, well, I'll just talk about what I know about it. And so I'm going to include a lot of topics about leadership in here. And as you know, this show is for us is for aspiring entrepreneurs, aspiring leaders, and existing entrepreneurs and leaders that want to be better. Or as always, anybody that just thinks something's missing, you think you can get better, you can, and that's why we're here. Um, so I want to talk about building a team. I think that the longer you're at the head of an organization, and being a CEO is a little different than just regular leadership because the kind of the buck really stops there. Although I do have leadership, I have board of directors and investors that I, manage, but or that I manage too. Not I don't manage them, but I point is everybody has a boss, okay? But the CEO building a team is a little different. So the the biggest lesson that I've learned in team building, and I've had a team that's expanded and contracted, and we have members that have left and members that have come on board, and there's some members that have, at least in this current large venture I'm in, have been here since the beginning, with me and alongside me before I was the CEO. In some cases, they even kind of outranked me initially, but we're still members today. The biggest lesson I would say is that you you have to realize that in order to keep a team of 4 or 9 or 100 together, whatever, but generally a executive team, maybe 3 to 7, or you know, not talking about the whole organization, but the team you directly manage. In order to keep them together, you have to manage disagreements among members, and you have to do it in a fair way. And so, every member comes from every as a leader, you have to understand that every member in your organization, but especially your team, has a different belief system than you have. They have different rules of behavior than you have, and they have different rules of behavior and beliefs than each other have. So one may find it unbelievably uh, inappropriate for a certain thing to occur, where another may find that completely appropriate and accepting of it. So oftentimes a big part of my job as the CEO is managing those mild conflicts that occur ahead of time, not letting things really boil to a head, addressing issues, um, but also really coaching other members that, hey, it's okay. Everybody has their quirks. Everybody brings everybody brings their best to the game. And by the way, I'm assuming you're managing your people to bring the best to the game. If you're not doing that, you're going to have a real hard time building a team if you're not getting the best out of your people. And that also takes a different approach for every person. But, keeping a team together is tough. There'll be, throughout my, executive career and leadership career, there's always a leader that who's on your team, or somebody that maybe they're having a rough time or they're not performing well. And by the way, those periods can be extended. Not everybody's a bad day, but some people have a couple bad months. Okay. I mean, life happens, and people, have different things occurring or different challenges in their role as leaders. And oftentimes their personal lives bleed over. And as a leader, it's your real job to just be, have some compassion around those while you're driving performance, but also to sometimes to keep the other team members off of a team member. So, a lot of managing conflict in a way is really important as a leader. You have to realize that, you can't let your team devour another team member unfairly. That's really important, and that occurs. I think most of you guys probably recognize what I'm talking about. That's different than having a really poor performing team member and other team members getting upset and wanting things to change. There's a slight nuance, but um, the other thing is that So that's around building a team, but also, but that assumes you already have a team. So what about when you're trying to build a new team? Like, how do you pick who to be on your team? And, I tell people, if you run an organization and someone quits or is terminated, um, you should view that kind of as an HR fatality. At least that's the way I view it. Now, it's different if someone leaves the organization because we can't provide them an opportunity and they deserve an opportunity and someone gave it to them from another organization and you just can't provide that opportunity for them. You just don't have the space to do it and they leave. That's a good job. They're leaving your organization, but they're doing a good job. You've done a good job. You prepared them to leave your organization. You don't have capacity for them, and you shake their hand and you pat them on the back. You give them a hug and you say, "Good job." Okay. But when they just quit because they're pissed off, or because something happened, or you have to terminate an employee, those are things you should deeply investigate. And the best way to avoid all of those things is to hire correctly in the first place. Okay. There's lots of ways to do that, but most often, even though it's hard, and look, maybe you're running a little small organization, or what if you're hiring your first assistant and it's just you? None of this changes for me. You need to interview several people. You need to have more than one person on the interview team, and you need to follow a certain format in how you make a decision. So here's the format I follow. Besides having several people involved, at least two in an interview, having them make their own assessment, and interviewing several people for the most case, here's the format I follow. Number one, is this a primary career fit? You may find a person that is a phenomenal used car salesman, and they sell more used cars than everybody, but you're running a service shop. It may not be a career fit, but it could be. You could say, well, this is still the automotive industry, and you sell cars or you run a service department. There's some crossover there. But if this person is a phenomenal used car salesperson and you're opening a bakery, you got to really think about, is this a primary career fit? Because sometimes all they're doing is looking for a job to fill a gap. They're leaving where they don't want to be for some other reason, maybe poor management, if I had to guess. That's what most people leave for, or at least they quit their leaders. It doesn't mean it's always a poor leader, but that's why they quit. And they're just trying to find a job. And then what's going to happen, they're going to get there working at the bakery and they say, I really do miss selling cars, and they're going to kind of go. That's not the case for everybody, and there are exceptions to everything I tell you, obviously, and some of them. But the most important thing to remember is that primary career fit is kind of important. The second thing I do is I really look for what I call a player mentality versus a victim mentality. Other people call it an internal locus of control. I'm really trying to look at that person and think about, do they really view the world through the lens of they have control of their destiny? That's very important to me. So the primary job fit, do they have an internal locus of control? Are they a player? The first one I kind of skipped over, sorry about that, is, do they meet the minimum qualifications for the job? So if you post a job and you say you need to be able to type 500 words a minute, and they come in, they only type 200 words a minute, they don't meet the minimum. So I answer kind of all three of those, and then I kind of answer, do I recommend them for the job or not? And that's kind of the process I worked through. I used to do it a lot more formally. I've worked at companies that did it formally. Matter of fact, almost exactly to that format. A large company I worked for about a decade is where I got some of that from, and most of what I explained probably is kind of exactly how they did it at one point, but it worked. It was effective. So that's kind of how you decide who to hire. Now, the other things that I didn't mention that are extremely important and also extremely dangerous are they a team fit? Do they fit with my team? Okay. Now, this is where it gets dangerous, because if you hire people that all get along and have the same interests, you're probably making a mistake. Now, I'm not saying you put a bunch of crazy different people in a room and that's an important thing. Some people hire diversity just for the sake of diversity. And just so you be aware, diversity is a buzzword, but I'm talking about diversity in every kind, but more especially diversity of thought, diversity of style, diversity of culture, things of those nature. So, that's why if you're hiring a diverse group, while you may need to manage some conflict, that I meant before, but I really just focus on who's going to be the best. Oh, that's another thing I didn't mention. Sorry for jumping around. Do they have the minimum requirements? Are they a player and they get internal locus of control? Um, is this kind of a primary career fit? Or does it make sense why they want to come here? And then lastly is I really, after I make the recommendation, would I hire or not? Sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no, sometimes it's a maybe. And I usually put the yeses in a pile. I review the maybes against the yeses again, and most of the maybes usually go back in the no pile, but some of the maybes may come over. And then I look at that bunch and I decide one thing. It's not who's the most qualified. It is who do I believe will be the most successful in that role. And it's hard to quantify that, okay? But if you're doing those things, if you're practicing a rigorous kind of a structured approach that makes sense, that supports, the things you need to support, you're going to stay out of trouble for a lot of reasons, right? A lot of HR pitfalls get missed, a lot of legal pitfalls get missed, but most especially you're going to be supporting your business in the right way, and that's kind of the most important thing. So that's building a team. That's the same thing for your first deal, the same thing for other deals. So, there's a difference between building one and managing one and developing one and keeping one through diversity. And all those are probably topics we should cover at a later time. So I think let me review my notes real quick, but I think I'm going to probably slow down there. No, I'm going to talk about one more thing. I got a lot of comments about bad leadership. Use the term toxic leadership. And so when you hire managers, understand you're hiring leaders and they're leading other people. Okay? So if you hire managers or leaders that work for you and they're leading other people and you start to see indications that they're not leading people in a fair manner like you are, you're going to have trouble with your team, the team you're building, and the greater team. So, building a team means a lot of things, but watching for poor managers means another, is a big part of that. So, I digress. I'm gonna cover that in a separate topic. I decided that, but anyways, I hope you got something around hiring, the importance of hiring. I'm gonna cover how to manage a team through adversity. I'm gonna cover how to address toxic leadership at a later setting as well. But I think for now, what I got to really point out is my phone's ringing. I'm going to have to ignore that. That was awkward. I'm going to get in trouble if I don't mention our social media sites. I know a lot of you check out now, but I got to do this. So I would like to we have our YouTube at Regular Joe CEO. We have our Twitter at Regular Joe _CEO. Obviously, Facebook's at The Regular Joe CEO. We have our Instagram, Regular Joe CEO. And we have our non-existent website, regularjoeceo.com. There's nothing there. Don't go. But, eventually someone in the future maybe, well, you know what? Someone in the future might be watching this video. And if you're far enough in the future, guess what? There might be a website, but there's not one as of March 22nd, 2019. So hopefully you're in the future watching this and there is a website and this has really got bigger. So I'm really glad you joined us today. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and so I'm going to go do some other things. And thanks for joining us again.